good morning, let's say. We are here as Hassa Architecture, which is a design and construction company based in Istanbul. It was founded and it's being run by architect Hilmi Şenalp, and we are here to represent him and his work actually. Hassa is a special architectural office that is specialized on Ottoman and Islamic architectural heritage mostly. And this is not something very common in Turkey actually. The architectural tradition and construction techniques tradition have not perfectly continued since the past to today. So when Hassa Architecture, led by Hilmi Şenalp himself, tried to specialize in Ottoman and Islamic architectural design, it also had to train and educate its own workers, craftsmen, artists, and everyone, because as I mentioned, the tradition of these craftsmanship have not perfectly continued up to today. So that's the way Hassa became a design and construction company. So besides pure classical Ottoman style architectural projects, Hassa has also is designing new experimental contemporary projects also, which are also derived from the architectural heritage of Ottoman and Islamic architecture. So today we are going to tell you how Hassa architecture perceives these Islamic patterns, which is a very characteristic of Islamic architecture, of course, how we look at it, how we try to use it, and how they can open a new gate to our future architectural designs. Besides the historic heritage we have, we are trying to look at the future also. And we believe that the principles, the structural meaning of these patterns can lead us to a new architecture which has its own identity coming from the past itself. So, first of all, I want to show you a special example from the mantle of Prophet Muhammad himself. This mantle is in Istanbul. It's from 6th century, of course. It was given as a present to Veysel Karani by the Prophet Muhammad, and since then it has come to Istanbul and it's being still in exhibition. So Hassa architects made the restoration of the mantle and the new exhibition project of the mantle. But the interesting part is the geometric patterns we saw and we had the opportunity to examine on the mantle itself. So I want to share this with you, and please keep in mind that this is from 6th century. This is the mantle itself, how it looks today in a very special showcase. This is the general overlook. So when you take a general look, it doesn't look very special. But now you'll see some close-ups to this mantle. This is a very tiny close-up, you see. And here you see, for example, these are really small, maybe smaller than a pinhole. And you see the perfect geometric pattern around that. And here also, you see this whole structure. This is also very interesting for woving technique also, because it's really tiny detail here we have. a great example from the Prophet himself, who is the resource of Islam we know. So this was very inspiring for us to see that Islamic architecture and geometry is very deeply related to these geometric patterns. Now we will show you the Turkish pavilion in Expo 2005 in Aichi. This is a new experiment from the geometric patterns, and at this point I want to introduce you Mr. Sırrı Şenerp, and he has a presentation about this Expo project here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again, and I will present Expo Aichi Turkish. But we actually use a special old historical system which is called arşın in Turkish. You may recall this from America, for example. It's like the food system, and it is applied well before here in Islamic architecture. And when we do our designs, we only use these measurements, as you can see here. Like one arşın is equal to 75 centimeters, and then it multiplies. And the first and foremost of the measurement is arşın, but nasıl en küçüğü?
Nasıl
en küçüğü?
The smallest.
The smallest one is the spider web, which is called Tar-e-Ankebut in Islamic architecture, and this is for weaving, but they also use it in Islamic architecture. So you can see our examples of our mukarnas applications. Basically, mukarnas follows the same way that a crystal forms, as you can see in the bottom. And these are our designs. And some of our designs again, that it has a specific grid, and then you can include some stars, and you then level them and raise it to the third dimension, and you got these shapes. And we put this just to show that we can define the minarets of Selimiye Mosque as the first skyscrapers. It is not a skyscraper, but also it has three stairs that if three persons go up to the balconies, it is not able to, they can't see each other. So there are three different pathways to the up. And other examples that we put here. And now I wanted to start the Turkish pavilion. We have the three structures. This is called the timber dome, I would say. And you also saw this in the entrance of Islamic Science and Technology Museum. And as you can see, you have the two-dimensional pattern on the floor, and then this pattern is raised to the third dimension, and also you can see the projection of the same pattern in the form of spider web above, flanking over the dome.
I think we had a movie for that.
Yeah, it's coming. Sure. And these are the other structures, and it has the same principle. And the other one. And as you can see, this is after our design. This is Han Shutter, which is in Kazakhstan, and they followed the same angle as we did here. If you look at these angles, you will see that is the same. And some views from the pavilion. And let me show you the how we raise the structure to third dimension. So this is the second dimension, and we are raising to third dimension in this way. Then you got the timber dome. Yeah, let's say again. Now I would like to because we want to talk about the universal principles which underlines the Islamic architecture, and we made a little experimentation of these principles in this pavilion actually, and we also tried to refer to the Islamic thinking, Islamic philosophy and mysticism. So I would like to talk about this a little bit now. So the expo got the Nature's Wisdom Award out of 69 pavilions, and in 185 days more than 3.5 million people visited. And this was an attempt to rethink about the nature of classical Islamic arts. So as you all know, Islamic architecture includes, Islamic art and architecture includes geometric patterns at 2-dimension and 3D geometry, as I showed you, which is called stalactites. And here it is called mukarnas. And also you have the figural representation of stylized vegetal and animalistic patterns in fractal character. Not the fractal geometry, but it has fractal character, and it is so-called arabesque. So you can see some examples of them. The left one is in Victoria and Albert Museum, and the right one is a new constructed mosque called Mimar Sinan Mosque in Ataşehir. And mukarnas can be called as Islamic sculpture. It has, as you can see here, it has a 2-dimensional complex plan. This has 9 edges, and also you have 5-pointed stars, and it starts with, I think it says 10, right? It's 10, yeah. And this is in Tokat, built in 1490. So you can see fractals everywhere. You can see in deep waters. You can see in galaxies. You can see it in electrons, atoms, molecules, whatever. And so in reading the nature, the Turkish pavilion starts from the universal principles, and the main concept was based on geometric patterns and mukarnas, and also fractal geometry, as I told you. And so whirling and circling or movement used as a metaphor here when we shape our structures. And we also had examined space and time from Islamic philosophical view. And one of the white structures, I had explained the timber dome. So I am talking about the other white structures. You have this pattern in fractal character, then you put it on the ground and start to raise it to 3rd dimension. Then you cut it into half, then rotate it in some angle, and you got this shape then. And the other one, you had a slightly different pattern when you compare with the previous one. Then you had these, you make a riddle rotation, like spirals. to have a fractal character, then you use the same way, cut it into half, then rotate it, and you get this. So how can we find what we have in Islamic architecture, and could there be any overlaps between the Islamic philosophy? That was the question that we are trying to answer. So the central concept of Islamic spirituality is called al-wahdat al-wujud, which can be translated as unity of being, and it is elaborated by Muhammad al-Ghazali. Ibn Arabi was the in his time the concept was totally formed, and also Sadreddin Konavi and Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi elaborated the concept with his views. So I want to quote Ibn Arabi here. He says, "In relation to the forms of the world, everything will perish. But in relation to its realities, the world will not perish, and nor is it possible to perish." So Ahmed al-Ghazali here better explains how it's like an explanation, the previous quotation. He says, each thing has two faces, a face of its own and a face of its Lord. In respect of its own face, it is nothingness. And in respect to the face of Allah, it is being. Thus, there is nothing in existence save only Allah and His face. So the things become nothing if we don't attribute them to the Creator. And also we can find the same view in Quran, which is in Surah Ar-Rahman 55. All that lives on earth or in the heavens is bound to pass away. But forever will abide thy sustenance self, full of majesty and glory. Which then of your sustainers' favors can you deny? For example, as we know, the universe will perish in some way, anyway. But here, the verse points that the Creator's face will be forever. So the unity of being, as we said, in Islamic mysticism, establishes the relationship between being and creation that counts creation as nothing in relation to the God. In other words, things exist with God, we can say. So the view I put at the bottom is the product of Ibn Arabi, but also Sadreddin Konavi better explained this. So if we want to understand God, you first look at his actions, which is called af'al. Then, once you had looked actions, these actions has to come out from his attributes, and names, qualities. So this is sifat. Then you can understand who is God and God's entity. So if we, of course, this is not enough. We have to match this with humans, because everything is for humans. So for God's actions, you have to pray, and for names and attributes, you have to contemplate his attributes, and so you can succeed in state of ikhlas, which is being perfect human. We call in Turkish insan kamil. Then we go into permanence and impermanence issue, which is called fena and beka in Turkish. So this poem, here you can see the miniature, and it is inscribed on the bottom here. So the translation of this, I am the snow of this mountain, won't melt even if daylight shines. If I lie on the ground for 7 years, I am in love, I won't decay. So this guy is making a metaphor between the snow and himself. So because he is in love with Allah, then even this gazelle can direct to himself because of his love. So here, how can we connect this philosophy with what we did here? So the basic, we have to start from basic things. you have point in geometry, line, plane, and sphere, and their movement forms the geometry. So in this dome, it is the metaphorization of the universe and creation. So you have the point, and the point moves, and by the moving of point, you got the geometry. And it is, but the point is forced by the creator. That's the underlying thing. And so in Quran, in 11th surah, I'm quoting, and his domination extends on the water, and Allah has created from water every living creature. So to emphasize this, we put the Mukarnas pool here to show where water comes from, and also emphasize the importance of water. So this Mukarnas example is carved by our craftsman, and you can see the plan and elevation of the Mukarnas here. And basically it has this section, and if you repeat it, you got this, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers, and the relation between 5 layers is done by the 6-pointed star that you see here. So these shapes, we try to connect this with the human intention and contemplation. So as you all know, the whirling dervishes, you can think this as a section of the skirt of dervish. So he's sweeping over the earth in the course of Sema. It is like his head lost in the clouds, and his consciousness is united with the Supreme Being in the contemplation, and while he's exploring and contemplating the universe. So by the movement of point, the movement of lines and spheres, we are trying to refer to the relativity of time. So time actually generated by the movement of things. So as you all know, most of the direction of movements in the universe, such as electrons, galaxies, are anti-clockwise. Not all of them, but most of them. So, and moments also multiplies and forms actually time. So there is no time, but there are moments, because we are wronged by the movements of the sun. But if you think that nothing is moving, then you have no time. So it is actually conceived by us. So in this paradigm, we try to momentize the time with the structures. So what's going on here is a unification with the ultimate being while contemplating the creation. So the geometry can be a means for contemplation, which is called tefekkür. So this is the end of my presentation. I'm quoting this. So the Islamic preacher and saint Abdul Qadir Jilani says, "Take the handiwork of God as your signpost to Him. Reflect on the work of art, and you may attain to the artist." Thank you very much.
Actually, this Expo project, I think, gives a general idea how Hassa architecture looks at this. And if we have time, I want to show you more examples from our work. And let's see. Okay. This is the Museum of History of Science and Technology in Islam. I think you have visited this museum. The wooden dome in Expo, after the Expo was finished, it has been brought to here. because we thought it would suit in. So this is the entrance. We have examples of geometric patterns here, and we make a new contemporary commentary on this pattern with tiles, Islamic tiles. So this is the dome, you saw that. So here we try to emphasize the infinity of these patterns, because especially in Turkish Ottoman geometric patterns, the line never ends up. It's infinite. It goes all the way. So this covers all the museum in the carpet, special carpet, and it climbs up to the glass in the elevator. And here also you see we divided the walkway and the hall itself with difference in colors, but the same pattern covers all the museum. So it walks with you, and it climbs up in wood and becomes a cloakroom. Tile work again. This is and it was an architectural competition. Hassa project was not selected, but I want to share you this. Hassa perceives the geometric patterns not only as ornamental things. We recognize that these lines, the continuity of the lines and the strong structure in the patterns, they can become something more concrete, which is architectural structure mostly. So we try to use them as structures, not only ornamental decorational elements. So this fractal thing, as you saw in Expo, this is a new experiment in the same way from wood structure. It was not built, unfortunately, but it's a new approach to mosque architecture. How much time do we have? I don't know. I'll be quick on this. Okay, I'll be more quick. These are the plan views and everything. This is an interesting example. It's in Üsküdar. I don't know how it's called in English. It's a wedding house. People get married here. So this is how we designed the wooden dome, and this is the very precise detail. And we had to build this up in Germany. As Mr. Bonner also said, they have very good millworking. So this is the mock-up in Germany. These wood elements are bended in two directions, so it's very interesting geometry. It's bent in both directions, and each piece is unique in all dimensions. So this is the production phase. And now we'll see this is the end product. This is how it looks now. It all carries itself. It doesn't have steel in it. It's wood elements piece by piece. They create their own structure, and it comes from the pattern itself. It doesn't have any supporting steel, anything, nothing. This is a new mosque that is still under construction in Üsküdar. It's part of the Marmara University. This is a very new approach to mosque architecture again. It comes from the Nautilus spiral and the geometric patterns. You'll see the details now. And here all structure comes from the pattern itself, and when you go into detail, more patterns, they continue to get smaller and smaller in each detail. These are glass elements here, which will get light into the mosque. And this is the Ottoman archives. It's a huge complex containing millions of Ottoman documents, manuscripts, and everything. This is the whole complex. And this is the Congress Hall. It was formed by the geometric patterns, both inside and outside. Here you see the triangle. We call these Turkish triangles in architectural context. This is the carpet design of the museum in the archives complex. So we had the same idea that this carpet goes over all the museum area, and it connects you and it gives you a feeling of unity. This is a Turkish embassy competition in Berlin. Again, we tried to use the patterns as structural elements itself. So this is the last example. It was a small ferry station. It's also unbuilt, but I love this because it gives you the feeling that I'm trying to convey to you, that these patterns are not only ornamental things, but they can easily become structural elements. So we imagined a wooden structure covered all with glass, and the roof, the facade, everything, and the floor. It comes from the floor and it climbs up and it becomes the structure itself. We love this idea. Some details from that. And this is all. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.